And welcome back to the APX podcast. And as we continue with our series of guests in our show, probably the so far to me the most decorated guest that I have in the show. Yeah, don't shake your head. It's true, at least for me so far. Coach Maria Simone. Well, I got 2 pages here for the intro, so I'm going to start reading. First of all, she's the founder and head coach of No Limits Endurance Coaching. On top of that, well, she's completed 100 or Ironman's 140.6, a double or Anvil, which I'm not familiar with this. This is a new thing for me. I've been in the sport for so long, but I like probably a question that I have in front of me for you. A double, okay, which is 281.2 miles, and a triple, which is 421.8 miles. She's also completed ultra running 200 miles. She has extensive education. She's a USA Triathlon Level 3 coach. She's certified in UESCA ultra running, and she probably one of the best things, she has a PhD in communication. Yes, triathlon highlights. And I cut it short there on the education because the list goes on and on and on the education. Triathlon highlights. She's a USA Triathlon Coach Educator of the Year. I was lucky enough to go and be tested by her in my USA Triathlon Level 2 certification. Outspoken Women in Triathlon Coach of the Year. I probably mentioned this before, 2-time double, okay, Anvil champion in 2015 and 2016. 2015, she was 4th overall, and 2016, she was 2nd overall. Running highlights, 2023, 3rd overall at the Bear Chase 50 miler, 2019, Tahoe 200 miles, 6th female. And 2017, she was the Javelina 100, 6th female also. So this is amazing, like I when I introduce or people ask me how long I've been doing triathlons, I tell them, well, I've been doing triathlons for over 30 years. But like with all this list that you have here, this like leaves me in the dust. So anyway, I could keep talking and talking about her bio, but I'll let Maria do her own intro. Thank you for accepting the invitation. I'm really honored, and this is a great deal to have you in the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I'm glad we stopped talking about the bio because that was getting boring. We got better things to talk about than that. But I do appreciate you having me on the show. And I think learning from each other, just as we did when I first met you in clinic, and now we continue to do that. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, yes, definitely. Again, starstruck. First of all, over here.
No more of that. No more of that.
Yeah, I mean, when I met you at the clinic, I'm like, oh, the coach, yeah, and like I see you, and best. Okay, I forgot to mention this. This is one of the best smiles in the sport, also. So you see all her pictures, and it's one of the best smiles in the sport. And then, when she's serious, you're like, oh, when I had you in front of me at the clinic, I'm like, this is scary also. Like she like,
oh no,
I'm gonna fail over here, but I gladly passed. And
RBF,
yeah,
that's bad. I gotta work on that then.
It's intimidating, and now that I read the bio, it's even more intimidating. But anyway, let's I like to start the shows, and especially with triathletes. It's like, how did you get into the sport? Like, take me back to your background in sports, and then what got you into triathlons. If you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I guess I'm of the age where I didn't start in triathlon, right? I'm old enough that you didn't start there. Although the kids coming up today, we got people starting in triathlon, which is cool to see. We just had an athlete who came to us, and she started in triathlon and like doing kids try, which I think is like amazing.
It's amazing.
But
yes.
for most of us that are older, obviously we came from somewhere else.
Yes.
And so I rode crew in high school. Despite being super short, I was pretty successful in crew and had a good run of it in my high school years. And loved, and like most sports that aren't running, you get punished by having to go run. It was never a punishment for me. So I loved running. Even the day we got punished, we had to run 10K carrying heavy wooden oars. And I was like, this is super cool. So I think the coach's lesson kind of got lost on me. But so from there, I got, I would say running is probably the way I got into triathlon. Although I did not compete in college at all. I wanted to row, but I'm 5'3", and college coaches were like, well, you could be the coxswain. And I was like, no, I'm a rower. And my little 17-year-old self, I was too proud. So that was a mistake, because that would have been good funding for college.
Yeah.
Instead, I didn't do much sport in college at all, mostly because I had to work full time to put myself through college. So it wasn't really an option for me to add extra stuff in. And then I got back, but I always ran for fun. Like I never stopped running, always ran. Just never raced, never did any races. I think my first like running race, I was probably like late 20s, early 30s. And it was like a 5K, charity 5K. And then I always wanted to do a marathon. It was on my list. I think probably that day we were running with the oar, I thought, I'm going to run a marathon. And then I did when I was like 33 or 34. And then it kind
Your
of took off
first
from,
race, or
yeah,
your first marathon.
my first
Yes.
marathon, I
Okay.
was 33 or 34. I'd already been running. I ran a lot, but just never raced. And then I was kind of hooked, and then got hurt like all runners do. And so this is a good story for any beginners listening. I grew up
Okay.
on the ocean, so knew how to swim to save my life and play in the ocean and in the bay. And when I got hurt, I said to my husband, like, what am I going to do now? I can't run. Oh my God, like life's coming to an end. And he said, well, why don't you go swim? And I said, with my face in the water? So that's how my triathlon career began, with my face in the water. Yep. So that's
So
how I got into
where did you
triathlon.
grow up? Like where, like you mentioned the Bay. So where is
Yeah. So
this?
I grew up right outside of Atlantic City in a town called
Okay.
Brigantine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
And well, natural swimming came naturally to you. And okay, let's
Oh, I'm not
move a
going to
little
say
bit forward.
naturally, but made
Well,
it
you were at the
happen.
beach. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
made it
So
happen, but I was not a natural.
okay. Okay. So okay, your first triathlon then. Like how did you get into it? Like what was it?
Sprint. It was the Hamilton, New Jersey Sprint Triathlon. Dark, dirty water. It was like a pond, I would think, glorified lake maybe. And that was my first triathlon. I got kicked in the face in the first like 3 seconds,
What
and then
distance?
swam. It was a sprint distance, so about a quarter of a
Okay.
mile. I swam with my face out of the water because I was so afraid to get kicked. But I finished that race. I was hooked. I had so much fun. And I did another sprint the following weekend because I was like, I'm going to right the wrong of that swim. That was not how I want that to go. And then that summer, I wound up doing like 12 triathlons. Not recommended.
Okay.
Like, as my coach me is like, ooh, cringy. That's a lot of racing. But athlete me was having a ton of fun. And they were mostly sprints, Olympics, and I ended with a half Ironman that year. Yeah.
Okay. And so how did you move on then to like all this long distance and ultra racing?
Yeah. So I did progressed fairly quickly. My second year, I tried an Ironman in Placid, loved it, uh, and really wanted to work on getting better at long course. So it took me, I played around with the 140.6 distance for about 4 or 5 years. I wanted to qualify for Kona, like, the rest of the world. It took me, from the time I said I wanted to qualify to qualifying, it took me about 3 years. But it took a lot from me trying to do that. Despite your very nice introduction, I am average athlete. I do not have like a lot of genetic benefits. I just work like a stupid dog, which tends to benefit long course ultra racing.
Discipline
I
beats talent.
Yeah, and I'm very good at discipline, and I just really enjoy long sessions. It's
Okay.
my skill set. I do not like, I would run 50 miles over a 5K any day. I do not
Okay.
love going fast and short. I do it because you should, but it's not, I don't enjoy it. Like I would not set up a race calendar for myself of short course racing. It's just not super fun for me. So I just kind of got into the long course and beyond the iron distance. So the anvils are basically just a double Ironman. They can't call it Ironman because obviously it's trademarked, so
Right.
they call them anvils. But it's the same kind of idea, and got into that and really enjoyed that. And then after that, got back into ultra running. So that's kind of what I do now, mostly ultra marathons now.
You're still doing this as
Mhm.
of today. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, my question, and it's probably like me not being up to date with the distances or the names of the races. Um, I used to know Ultraman,
Mhm.
right? Ultraman was a race that was a 2 day race, and it's double the 140. Oh, it's triple the 140.6.
It's a 3 day race,
It's a
and
3 day. Okay.
it's got slightly different. It's not like simply double the iron distance. But it's a 3 day stage race. The first day you swim and you do a bike. The second day it's all biking, and then the third day is a double marathon. So that is
Okay.
different than the anvils, but it's in the same family, in terms of, I've done an Ironman. What's next? So
Okay.
it's
Okay.
sort of in the same, but you go to sleep at night in the Ultraman. You do, well, you hope to sleep at night. The double anvils, once the clock starts, it starts. So, well, at least in the continuous format. So you go to sleep, that goes against your time. So
Okay.
when I did both of the doubles, I did not sleep. I just kind of went straight through. I tend to do fine as long as the race is under 30 hours. I don't tend to need sleep. If the race is going to be longer than 30 hours, then I'll take sleep.
Okay. So, how long did it take you? At
So
the yeah, or you yeah.
the two that I did were in two different locations. The first year was definitely a faster course. It was a pool swim. So you swam 4.8 miles in a pool.
Oh gosh. Yes.
But it was
Okay.
faster. Like you're in the pool, you don't have to sight. You're just kind of, and we were circle swimming. So if you were behind somebody, you're getting good draft. It was a lot
Yes.
faster. The bike was a true loop. It was just a 6 mile circle that you did over and over, and then the run was like a 2 mile out and back, something like that. So I think the first year, it took me 25 hours and change, and I think the second year was 26 hours and change on it. And the first one was in Tampa, the second one was in Claremont. The Claremont course I liked way better, despite being hillier. The run was on trail. Now it's back to road. So anyone listening to this, if you do the Florida double anvil, the run is back to the road. But the year I did it, it was half trail,
Okay.
which I loved. I mean, like for me, it was like super fun.
Rather be on the trails.
Any
Okay.
day. Yeah, I'm done with the road.
Okay.
I got a gravel bike, so who knows? Gravel try might be
Oh,
the next step.
nice.
So yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, well, this is like your a short version of your athletic career. And so I'm going to move now into like coaching,
Hmm.
right? So, what sparked this idea? Being a PhD in communication, like, did you have an experience? Like, were you working full time, or like, how did you transition from, if you did, like, or like,
Hmm.
how did this happen?
Yeah. So
You finished school.
yeah,
Yeah.
I finished college. Well, finishing school took a long time, but in between my bachelor's and my master's, I actually coached my high school crew team. I went back and volunteer position. I totally loved it. Really enjoyed kind of work. Sport really changed my life. The trajectory of my life absolutely changed, uh, due to sport. So I think for me, it's always been about how do I get sport in more people's life, because I think it has that power to do that. So I really enjoyed that. But then, life catches up, and I went back to graduate school, and I went to graduate school in Texas. So I stopped coaching. Long story short, fast forward, I'm a college professor. I'm teaching at Rowan University, which is right outside of Philadelphia, for anyone who's familiar with that area. And I'm teaching summer classes because got to pay bills. I got a lot of education I got to pay for, all that kind of stuff. And I just got tired of teaching summer classes. I was showing up on September 1st and I was burnt. So, and by then I was already into triathlon and running. And so you know how this is, right? You have friends ask you like, oh, hey, can I pick your brain? Like before you get into coaching, before you're officially coached. And like you're giving tips. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can be an actual coach. So I started it as a side hustle. It quickly became another full-time job. So for a really long time, so I've had the business for 15 years. And so for like a really long time, I was working 2 full-time jobs as a college professor and running the business, I brought other coaches on staff. And about 7 years ago, I guess, my husband was like, I want to move from New Jersey. And I was like, me too. So I had finally gotten to the point where I was like, I want to move, but I knew if we moved, I wasn't going to start over again and try to get tenure again. I was tenured, I was promoted, was not doing that again. Like that was a lot of work. So that's when I started to think, I think I'm going to try to do this full time. And so it took me about 2 years to get all my ducks in a row. But I switched over to doing this full time. We have 8 coaches on staff. We have about 150 athletes that we serve throughout the year in a variety of different capacities, but primarily one-to-one coaching is what we do. But that's how it started, all because I didn't want to teach summer classes, and it just blew up. Despite like I have a degree in communication, so that should tell you. I don't know anything about business. Or at the time, I have a 15-year education now, so I feel like I'm a lot better at business. But like when I first started, I did not know what I was doing.
Okay. And so
like on the business side, I really didn't know what I was doing. But
of course, yeah. So, okay, can you like go a little deeper into that? Like how was this process of like, did you bring athletes with you? Like how, well, it's probably advantage. You live in Boulder, correct?
No, now I live in Conifer. I live about an hour and a half south of Boulder. But at this time, I only moved to Colorado 5 years ago. So most of the business's growth actually happened in New Jersey, which I think is better because when I first opened the business, I was where I lived outside of Atlantic City. I was one of, if not the only coach in that direct area. There were some coaches around in Philly, of course, but I was an hour south of Philly. So I really lucked out in terms of timing, starting the business. Now there's many more coaches in the area, but when I first started, it was me and maybe one or two other coaches in that area. So, and I capitalized on that, you know, I was an active triathlete. So those early years, I think half of my roster came from the pool.
Okay.
I'm swimming and they're just like, oh, hey, can you help me with swimming? And then next thing you know, I got athletes that way. And then word of mouth is, you know, I think for most of us as coaches, word of mouth is the most important and precious resource. So you do a great job. Your athletes tell other athlete friends that you did a great job and you'll grow, you know. Correct. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but
but that's like the seed.
Basics.
That's the seed. Yes. Yeah.
And
okay, so triathlon coaching, right? You started as a level 1 coach. What year was this?
2011. I got my first certification in triathlon.
Okay, 2011. Okay, and you had already how many athletes at this time?
Oh, 3.
Okay.
Yes. Not many. And 2 of them were my best friends' in-laws.
Right. Okay. That happens. Yes.
So I had like one person who didn't know me that hired me at that time, you know, but yeah.
How long did it take you to go from level 1? Okay, for those of our listeners that are not familiar with the tiers of coaching in triathlon, there's 3 levels of coaching in triathlon or USA triathlon. And there's level 1, there's level 2, and Maria is level 3, which is the top tier of the coaching education. And so you went from level 1 to level 2 in how long? Like What was your time in there?
Yeah, it was about 7 years, primarily because the level 2 course at that time, like once I became eligible for the level 2 course, at that time they were only hosting it in Hawaii. And I just simply couldn't afford. And it was always, and I was
Flying
still
to Hawaii,
teaching at this
yes.
time. And it was always in October with the race. So I would have had to take off a week of work and travel to Hawaii. So until they started moving them to Colorado Springs, I really couldn't go. So it took me 7 years, but I was prepared to do it much sooner than that. But I just couldn't get it any sooner because of the travel and the time off that it required.
Okay,
Like I'm sure
what are
many
the
coaches can relate. You know, it's a time you have to kind of measure all the
yes,
competing priorities. Yeah,
your
and then
experience and yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Keep going.
and then
Yeah, sorry, I
yeah,
interrupted.
and
Yeah,
then this past January, I got level 3.
just this January.
January
Yes.
2024. Yep, level 3.
Okay. And so that was how many years in between? Like 9 years after? No, seven,
No, it would have
8,
been
7,
5 years. I think
5
another
years.
5 years.
Okay. Okay. So
My math might be off on the first one. It might be 8 years to level 2. My math might be off. 2011, 2019, 2024. That's better.
there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, tell me or explain to us the difference like between level 1, level 2, like what's the advantage of becoming a level 2 coach against or versus a level 1?
Yeah. So I think a college metaphor, which is probably the easiest way to think about the levels. So level 1 would be sort of like a bachelor's, right? Where you are given information. There may be some interactivity, but much of level 1 is really just you're given information and you do what you will with it. When I took level 1, it was actually still in person. Now level 1 is primarily online with both a synchronous and an asynchronous component. So I think the interactivity has probably dropped even more, I think, on the level 1 side. And I would say level 2, the primary difference there is that it's much more like a graduate seminar where, and you know this,
Yes.
you don't just sit in the chair. Like, yes, we are teaching you, and yes, we're giving you information, but there's a lot more expected from the coaches who attend level 2 in terms
In
of
person,
their
yeah.
interactivity. And that's actually going to be increasing again. We're right now, I know USA Triathlon's working on even more expanded interactivity components. So I think it'll continue to improve, because I think that's really kind of how we see that level 2 is more of a graduate school master's level kind of program. And then level 3 is like defending your dissertation every single day for 4 days.
Nice. Nice.
with a new group of people every day.
Okay. And it's, I
Yeah.
mean, it's so challenging. At the same time, it's a very rewarding experience. The first time I got certified in 2009 for level 1. And like I probably mentioned this in a previous podcast, like I was doing personal training at the same time. And I was making more money with personal training than with triathlon coaching. So it was only a few friends, less than a handful of friends that I was like, were interested in the same thing. Like, oh, can you help me? And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll help you. And wasn't charging some of them, or I wanted to have the certification to back up what I was doing. And of course, great money was coming from personal training. And then I just forgot about it until I think I got recertified in 2019. I was like, oh, and I'm now talking to all you guys, like Michelle and you and Jim Vance, like you guys are all like, I took the certification at the same time that you did, and you guys are killing it in the sport and coaching. I'm like, here I am, like grabbing all the tools again, like putting everything together. And like, of course, this podcast is like helping me like gain the knowledge from you guys at the same time. And I'm loving to see how you guys are able to do what I've been dreaming to do.
Mhm.
and making like it makes me like be able to touch that dream, to be
Yep.
able to be close to that dream. So okay, like let me keep picking your brain then. So
Yeah, let's do it.
like how do you go from 5 athletes to 150? How do you
Mhm.
manage all this? What made you be, like, what keeps you successful up to date also?
Uh, Hustle.
Yes, of course.
You gotta be willing to hustle, and you have to really enjoy what you're doing, and you have to, I
Definitely.
think, be willing, particularly if you're going to be the business owner. You need to be willing to work very nearly around the clock. Because I have my own roster of athletes. So there's the work I do with my athletes, and then there's the work you have to do with the business. And like I
Right.
said, when I first started, my business knowledge
Yes.
was slim. However, I used to work for an advertising agency. I grew up not particularly well endowed with money. So always hustled. Like got my first job when I was 12. I was bussing tables. It was illegal, but the guy let me work there. Like all that, the hustling started at a very young age, and I've had a million different jobs until I kind of finally settled in my older years. But one of my jobs in the early years was in marketing and advertising. So I didn't know much about like QuickBooks and accounting and that kind of stuff, but I knew about marketing, and that certainly helped me because I figured I can hire an accountant, which I do, and I've had the same accountant for the last 20 years, even before I started the business. He can run the business whenever he wants. He's amazing. So
Okay, that's great.
and you got to have a lawyer, you got to have those professionals. But I do think partly that background in marketing served me well, because I knew how important it was to create a brand. So even when I had 5 athletes, I presented like we were much bigger than we were. I always spoke in terms of we instead of I, even though it was
Yes.
me and 5 people, or 3 people. Really, it was
Well,
three
it's
people the
we. It's
very
still a
first
we,
time.
though.
It's still a we. So I always talked in terms of we. I took advantage of opportunities to put the business in places that mattered. So I volunteered at races a lot so that I could connect with the various race directors in the area, so that I wasn't just trying to like, hey, can you send me some athletes? I was doing something for them first, like by volunteering or by sharing, and I taught courses on social media marketing. So I
Okay, there
just
you
kind of
go.
took what I'd been teaching kids for years, and mostly I taught it, you know, but anyway, I took what I had been teaching and just started applying it for the business.
For the
Um,
business.
and I still think though, like the in-person stuff mattered the most. So like I would do free open water swim clinics, and I would do track nights. And I charged a little bit for the track nights just because I had to buy extra insurance and pay for the track. But it was
Yes.
like $5. So it was like, as far as people were concerned,
Nominal.
it was
Yeah.
free. And with the open water swim clinics a long time ago, USA Triathlon was giving grants as long as you were serving underrepresented populations. So like I did, clinics, mostly like women's only clinics, for open water swimming. And so was able to get some grant money to pay for the insurance and that kind of stuff. They don't do that anymore. But you could still, I guess my lesson would be, you can still charge a very nominal fee, cover your costs,
Yes.
always cover your costs, if you can. And that's really, I think, how it grew quite a bit. And then just my own racing career, I think, came at the right time. I'm
Yes.
50 now, so I'm like listening to the list. I'm like, dude, I'm a washed up has been, but I had some good days. I had some good days. Uh, not the best in the
I'm
field by
sure you
any
can
means.
still outrun a bunch of us. So yeah.
Yeah. As long as we're on trail. Yeah. The road running is not,
Okay.
I don't do much of that anymore. But yeah, so I think just kind of really working as many different channels as I could, face to face, social media, having a website that looked professional and looked like we were away. So and I never, like, I think maybe my first or second year in business, and my sister goes around to local schools and helps them with various things. She used to be a teacher, but now she helps them with testing protocols and that kind of stuff. But she went to one of the local schools, and one of the principals there was like, dude, your sister's like got a huge business. And I'm like, it worked.
It looks great.
It was like my second year of business. It was still only me. Maybe at that time I had 10 or 12, maybe 10 people. But we were making it look big. And then I hired my first coach in 2015. And that was the decision, because I was turning people away. Because like I said, there was only so much room at the inn, and I am a pretty full service coach. I'm not like high contact, lots of attention, and there's only so many people you can coach if that's the service you're offering. So I was turning people away. And my husband was like, what? They have these things. They're called employees. You can hire them and they do stuff. So I remember I sent out an email at the time. This was before like any Facebook groups or anything like that. And USA Triathlon used to have like an email listserv. You might remember this, how they used to have it. And so I sent out a letter on that listserv. And I was like, coaches who have multiple coaches, how'd you do it? How'd you find your people? How do you pay? Like asking questions that we all ask, that I answer now on the regular for people who are looking to hire coaches. No one responded except Lindsay. And her email said, I'm not looking. She's like, I'm not a coach. I don't have coaches that work for me, but I'm looking to get hired. Can I submit my resume? And I was like, this works. And I couldn't have, it just really super lucky, because she couldn't have been a better fit for me and us and the growth of the business. So, and that's where it started. And so now we've grown since then.
So, how many athletes, or you mentioned it briefly or lightly, like at what point, like of course you were feeling that you were really busy with your athletes, right? And at what point, like what is that tipping point of the athletes? Like when do you decide to go from doing it yourself to hiring that assistant coach?
This is a great question. And I don't think there's a specific number so much as there are a specific set of things that start happening when you have too many athletes. So, and I say this because I could say, so for example, at that time when I first hired Lindsay, I had a whole nother job. So my number was different in 2015 than it is now, because I don't have that other job anymore. This is all I do. So that you want to look out for, not just you, but any coach, or even I would say this probably applies to any job. If you're putting too much on your plate when you start forgetting details, and you're missing on some details you should know. This doesn't mean you have all your athletes' zones memorized. That's not the details I'm talking about. But I'm saying, like, you're looking at an athlete's name and you can't remember what they're doing that season. That's a problem.
Yes.
So you're missing like details about this person. You're not showing up on time for meetings, or you're completely missing meetings. You are, sacrificing personal life as well, I think is important. And each of us are going to have a different, this is why I can't give you a specific number, right? Because each of us are going to have a different threshold of how much personal life they can or will sacrifice, right? So people with children may have a different threshold than people without children. People with a significant other may have a different threshold than people without a significant, and those kinds of things. And also, I think, feel yourself getting burnt. I think this is an under discussed topic for us in coaching. Burnout's real because we invest so much emotional energy into our athletes. And if you have too many athletes, there's only so much room at the inn, right? There's only so much emotional energy that you can have to spend. And when it's gone, you're burnt. And I think, in the years that I've been coaching, I've had cycles where I have felt burnt, and then just take steps to, okay, where's the pressure valve? Like, where can I, before I'm fully burnt out, where can I like let some of the steam out? And so sometimes that means one less athlete than you might normally have. And the nature of your roster is also going to dictate how many athletes you can take on. I don't do necessarily like a lot of different tiers, but if you have some athletes, if you have different tiers with different levels of service, the more more you're offering, the more services you're offering, the smaller your roster is going to have to be because
Yes.
to accommodate that. We also do single sport coaching versus multi-sport coaching. And,
Yes.
coaching a runner takes less time for me than coaching a triathlete, especially on the data side. So I do give a price discount for that kind of stuff, but that also changes to your question, that changes how many people are on the roster. It really kind of depends. So I don't know if that's a very academic answer. I'm such an academic.
But it's perfect. No. It's I didn't expect any less. So like, how many athletes are you coaching personally right now?
So I will typically carry a load in and around 20 to 25 athletes, depending on kind of those factors that you.
And you feel comfortable with this, depending?
I do.
This will vary from season to season, probably.
It'll vary season to season. And the other piece of it too is like, I could probably, if I didn't have to run the business and work with my coaches, so I consider each of my coaches as like an athlete too. Like, I have monthly calls individually with my coaches, and then we also have monthly coach meetings and those kinds of things. So if I didn't have that, I could probably afford to do more like 25 to 30 athletes, but there's a time in there
managing a business,
that goes,
and then
yeah.
So how many assistant coaches do you have right now?
So there's 8 of us total,
are working with you,
and
8 of us.
And 8 of us, and most of them are full-time coaches. We have a few that still have their side hustle.
Okay.
Which is their real job, their day job, whatever you want to say. But I think by and large, we have a lot of coaches who are committed to the lifestyle. And I think that's important too. Like, if you're going to coach sport, you need to be, you don't have to still race. I don't think that that's necessary. And I don't think you need to be a stellar athlete either. I don't think stellar athletes always make great coaches, and vice versa, but I do think having an understanding of the life your athletes are living is important, even if you're not currently living it now. Like, I don't do Ironmans anymore, but I remember it. I remember the bike. I remember hours on the bike. I know what I remember how
sacrificing.
It goes.
Yes.
Yeah. And can still relate to, because like I said, I do still race just on the running side. But the gravel bike, I don't know. I love it. Let's see. I don't have a lot.
How long have you had your gravel bike?
I just got it, so my skills are weak.
Okay, careful, huh?
Yeah.
Are you wearing your helmet?
Always. I don't understand.
There you go. Do you prescribe strength training to your athletes? Like, how do you include it during the week? It doesn't matter if it's running or swimming or triathletes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think strength training. Yeah, I think strength training is an important component for endurance athletes, either in terms of prehab or rehab. Hopefully they don't need rehab, but obviously it's a component to coming back from injury. But I think we wait too long as endurance athletes, myself included. I'm included in this way for sure. I just don't love it. It's just not as fun as swimming, but running. It's just not for me. But I think it's an important piece of an endurance athlete's life, primarily for the reduction of injury risk. That's number one, especially for the kinds of athletes we coach. But I also think there's a performance component to strength, particularly for masters athletes, because we are losing muscle mass. So you can slow that down. It doesn't have to be this like cliff. You can slow that down. And so I think strength has both an injury risk reduction and a performance component to it. How I schedule it is going to totally depend on the athlete. Do they go to the gym or do they do it at home? Are they in a high volume or high training load period, or is this preseason, postseason, general prep? So, the strength is definitely going to be periodized with the swim, bike, run, often in the opposite direction though, right? So like, as swim, bike, run picks up, the strength drops to more of like a stabilization phase. When the swim, bike, run is low, then we can maybe work on some areas of strength that would benefit the athlete, and mobility too, right? It's not just
Yes.
resistance training. Mobility is a
Yes.
key piece of this as well. I had an athlete who took me a long time to convince her to do mobility, but once she started, her run times started coming down. And she's like, well, like what's, I'm like, yeah, because you can actually move your legs the way they're supposed to move now. It's not just about strength. It's also about like, can you get the proper extension? Are you, are you over or under rotating because of something that's limited? So I do think that it's an important piece of it. So I don't have a one size fits all answer on this, but it's
Yes,
going to move,
but
it's going to move
it
with the athlete.
I always make this a comparison. Like I like cooking, so I always tell them like this is like the salt and pepper in your recipe. If you're making something savory, you're always going to add salt and pepper, and you're going to swim, bike, and run. That's your main dish, but
Yeah,
you have to add strength, mobility, to make sure that that result comes out well. It
that's right.
tastes good at the end. So and I, like, you came late into the strength training. Like I probably started strength training. I started doing triathlons when I was 23, 22. And yeah, and then I was 36 when I started really including strength training regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I was a personal trainer then. I'm like, and I was reading all the books, like, oh, Mark Allen or Triathlete magazine, you say you got to do bench press and squats, but this was the basics back in the
Yeah,
day. They're doing
yeah.
squats and bench presses, and it's like, okay, this is good. And then skull crushers, and I'm like, oh, okay. But then it's like, oh, it's getting more and more functional. And
Yep,
it's amazing how our industry advances, and it gets more specific
yep,
to each pattern and each sport. So
yep.
I mean, I'm watching the Olympics right now, and this is going to come out probably after the Olympics are done. But like, it's amazing, like the swimmers right now, it's insane. Like,
Yep.
they look like bodybuilders now, and it's a difference between the sprinters and the 1500-meter guys. Like, the
Yep.
sprinters are all buffed and well defined, and the sprinters or the long distance guys are like skinny and lean. And I'm talking about swimming. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I lost you there, but you're still there. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love how we are evolving as an industry. And
Yep.
okay, let's touch another subject: nutrition for this type of
Mm.
racing and long distance we're talking about. So short distance, it's probably easy, like you're doing a sprint or an Olympic distance. Like, make sure that those days you're having for breakfast whatever you usually have for breakfast, and you're not doing anything new that day.
Mm-hmm.
But then we move on to the 70.3s and the full, and then the ultra distances. Like, how do you plan nutrition for this type of events?
Oh yeah. I mean, it training itself isn't what's one size fits all, but when you get into like fueling and hydration, it's like a whole nother level of not one size fits all. And even for the same person, if you coach them long enough, what worked for them will eventually stop working for them. So you're going to have to figure it
Yes.
all out all over again. So it's, I think, moving target, but we know now for sure, um, fueling and hydration is the key not only to performance, but also to recovery. So I think for me, even with my short course athletes, I do make suggestions, particularly because I'm focused on not just their performance in that particular session, but we got to get up tomorrow and we have to do it again. And
Yes.
if you haven't done the previous day correctly, then the next day is not going to go all that great. Or it might
Right.
take 2 days to catch up, but it is eventually going to catch up and I think we're learning more and more about how so many of us are in this chronic state of underfueling. We're seeing a lot of articles about that now, which I think is great. But when I was when I was first like getting into Ironman and competing and trying to become competitive, my coach at the time was way ahead of the curve because he always said to me, it's an eating contest. I don't care how little, because I would be like, I'm 120 pounds. I don't need all these calories. I don't care what your size is. I need you to eat as much as you can humanly eat and not get sick. He was like one of the, like, and now, because, you know, when I first got into coaching, it was all like the based on your size and how long you're going. And it's still a little bit based on how long you're going, of course. But now the whole idea of like based on your size is out the window. It's like just as much as you can eat and not get sick is what we're going for.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the summary of my long course fueling advice for people. It's obviously more complicated than that.
Yeah.
But typically what I like to do, you know, working with an athlete, let's just use a traditional year, although of course we know training doesn't work in a traditional year. We're just to say, you know, we're starting in January or whatever. We're going to try a bunch of things and we're going to see kind of what works. I ask athletes to log their intake. Usually when athletes start this, they're not super precise. They'll just tell me, oh, I had some scratch or precision, or insert your brand name here. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't say that because you probably have sponsors.
That's okay.
So insert brand name here, insert
Yes.
brand name here. But they don't tell me anything else. Like, okay, I prompt them with how many carbs per hour, how much ounces of water, how much electrolytes. And then I start getting them into the per hour mindset. So that they understand that, like, okay, if we're shooting for 900 calories, you're not doing all that in hour 3. You want to make sure that you're spreading that across, right? So getting them in that per hour thinking. And then we start thinking through, well, how did it go? How did you feel? If they tell me they got a little sick, we try to triage, okay, what might have caused that? Were you under, because a lot of times, you know, athletes will try a fueling source, but they don't drink enough water. And if you're not drinking enough water, you're going to get sick. Or they drink too much water. That could get them sick too. You know, or
Yes.
I have also learned all sorts of things, like athletes can be allergic to the dye in the food. The athletes can be allergic to the so-called natural flavorings that are in, they're not natural.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
you know, I had an athlete that was sick once to like, he can't have any orange flavor because whatever they make that fake orange flavor from, it makes him sick. So just like, you know, I think for me, starting early and practicing often is the advice, so that by the time we get to race day, they've already done 3 months worth.
All the testing. Yes.
Yeah. They've done it in hot, in cold, in hard, in easy, uphill, downhill. They've figured it all out so that by the time we get to race day, you just push play and you just do the thing, because you get race brain and you get stupid. And once you get stupid, you need a plan that you can just do, because race brain is real.
Okay.
Ultras are different. Ultras are different.
Yes. Yeah, we're getting very close to the end here. Yeah.
Yes.
I imagine like you have to plan, like, can just give us a quick, like or how do you eat for an ultra, like, and just a quick, like version.
So like a ultra marathon, right? Ultra.
Yeah.
Well, actually the double anvils would be very similar. So I typically will have a primary liquid calorie source that I concentrate. I've been a fan of concentrated bottles since like Carbo Pro and Perpetuum. And now we've got all great stuff. So I'll have a concentrated bottle of something that if all else fails, I can always get a sip of something in. But then I'll supplement with real food. So it's typically a mix of a concentrated bottle and real food. And by real food, that could be potatoes, grilled cheese sandwiches, quesadillas. I don't really like peanut butter and jellies when I'm racing all that much. Burritos are so good.
Yes.
Noodles, you know, that kind of stuff.
Wow. Okay. And you just like throw
Pancakes.
them in at one point, through the race.
Yeah,
when you get tired of the sweet taste of all the other stuff that you're having. Yeah. So it works the same way.
Kick lately.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. When is your next race?
I am doing 100K in October.
Where?
So I am in San Diego, outside of San Diego, Cuyamaca. I'm
Okay,
saying that
somewhere
wrong.
around there. Yeah, I have no idea. In San Diego. Okay,
So it's in the
100K.
mountains. It's in the mountains outside of San Diego. That I
Okay,
can say for sure.
okay.
As long as the fires
October.
cooperate. Yeah, October.
Yes,
It'll
I
be
know. How
my
are you feeling? Are you strong? Are you feeling strong for that?
I feel okay. I had some health issues back in May, so I've been building back from that. So yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
fingers crossed over here that you get
Yeah.
over that. And
Yeah,
okay.
it'll be fine. I
Well,
just got to get my Western States qualifier. Year number 8.
when is that? When is Western? So
uh,
it's next year, Western
so
State.
yeah, so but every December they have a lottery, and this will be
Okay.
my 8th year in the lottery. I haven't been picked yet, and you have to do a qualifier every year. So.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Maria Simone. I again, like, I wish I had a couple more hours to chat with you, but I know that you're super busy, and yeah, so thank you so much for accepting our invitation. If people want to find you, where should they go? Like Instagram or your website?
Yep.
Tell us.
Yeah. So, me personally, you can find on Instagram or Threads at Mass Life. So MASLIFE. MAS is my initials, but it works out to be like Moss Life. Um, and then I'm on Facebook, of course. And then my business website is NoLimitsEndurance.com. And from there, you can find all our socials, but we're No Limits Endurance Coaching on Instagram. Not on Threads, just Instagram and Facebook
Yes.
right now.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. As you all know, I'm also a triathlon coach, a personal trainer, and you can find us also, well, you know where to find me, the APX podcast and APX or Andarcia Performance Coaching. With nothing else to add, it was a pleasure having Maria. Thank you so much. And until next time.
Thank you. It was great to be here.